Hello everyone and welcome back to Coin Bureau Clips. Today, Jessica and I are going to talk about books, specifically crypto books, because quite a few of you have been asking for some crypto reading recommendations. As Jessica has pointed out, we have got a lot of crypto books here at Coin Bureau HQ, sort of a mini crypto library really, isn't it?
I would say out of all the book resources I've seen in different crypto offices, Coin Bureau has the best one. There's probably around 30 to 35 different crypto books. So I get to sometimes go in, have a little read, take one home for the weekend. It's great.
Yeah, there we are. There we are. You see, there's so much more going on behind the scenes. So we thought we would talk about three of our favorite crypto books today, and yeah, just do sort of three each. Just a selection of some of the ones that we've read sort of in the past recently, or I think in a couple of cases actually are still reading at the moment.
Yeah, correct. We both have one in the pile that we're still reading that has impressed us to the point that it makes the top 3 cut, which is a pretty big achievement, I must say.
Yeah. And I should say there are loads more crypto books that both of us have read and that are very much worth reading. We can't talk about all of them today. I have spoken about a few of them in the past. Things like the Bitcoin Standard, which is like required reading. So we're not going to talk about that today. That's one you should know about and read at some point. But yeah, these are 3 different ones. I may have spoken about some of these before, but anyway, let's see. So Jessica, do you want to start us off? What's your first one?
Yes. So when I was deciding what books to kind of bring to the table, as it were, I thought these were all books that have given me at some point a kind of crypto eureka moment of like, oh, this is why I'm in this industry. This is something that I will tell people about or use as an explainer. And these are all books that I would gift people that are not in crypto or that are looking to level up their crypto skills. So I'm going to start with this one, which is The Blockchain Revolution by Don Tapscott. And Don Tapscott, he's a really interesting Canadian entrepreneur. He did one of the first blockchain TED Talks back in 2016.
Okay.
And I think it amassed maybe like 7 million views. And I was lucky enough to interview Don in 2022.
Right.
And after the interview, he was talking about how governments should adopt blockchain technology and use the US as an example. And I was like, you know what, I've got to give this book a read. COVID had just started, so I was like, you know, I've got some time on my hands. And I would say as a non-technical person, and for the people that are watching that maybe aren't coders, but are looking to level up on just their awareness surrounding the underlying technology of kind of blockchain, especially like the Ethereum network, smart contracts, dApps, the analogies in this are really, really good. They give you kind of a context, which is very helpful when you're looking to level up on your skills. And one thing that I found really interesting here, he talks about kind of governance on the blockchain. So, you know, how voting could really help amplify the trustless society of not having to rely on governments when you're looking to vote. But also the sharing economy. So he looks at the example of, you know, like Airbnb and also like Uber, for example, and how this is what we've been brought up to as like a sharing economy, a gig economy, how it's really empowering the workers. And he kind of underlines in this that they're still multi-billion-dollar companies. And actually, if you were to incorporate blockchain in these business models, it would be so much more lucrative for the workers that are actually on the ground, kind of carrying out the rides or renting out their homes. And it's just a really interesting look into the kind of ecosystems that could be amplified with blockchain technology. Okay. It gives a lot of really good examples. And I remember reading it and being like, okay, this is how blockchain actually will help companies and entities and also ecosystems that already exist become even more efficient and effective and profitable. And it just reminds us why we're in the space. I recommend it.
All right. So this is a good one to read if you're, you know, if you want to know about kind of blockchain use cases, you know, answer that kind of tricky question that anyone who's interested in crypto gets posed every so often. It's like, what is blockchain? What is crypto actually useful for?
Yeah, and I would say more blockchain. This is a very good kind of blockchain in business, how it can amplify and improve, and blockchain in voting, for example.
Okay,
Yeah, really
and it
good.
explained, and you said it's got these good analogies, so it explains it in a way that's kind of easy to understand.
Absolutely, yeah. Which is, I think it's needed. Also, it's an easy read. I mean, I know we're going to dive into some of these books, but Ray Dalio, for example, amazing author, but I find it really hard to sit through a few chapters of a Ray Dalio book.
Yeah, I must say, I read one of Ray Dalio's quite recently, The Changing World Order, Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order, and it was very interesting, but yeah, it was quite tough going at places. So yeah, anything that explains, blockchain is not an easy thing to grasp, and anything that explains it clearly and with good analogies is right up my street. So yeah.
And I would say before you maybe buy the book, if you are keen to have a little look into Don Tapscott, you can watch his TED Talk, which is on YouTube, and just get an idea for what he's about and see how you feel. And it's very reflective of the book as well. And the book first came out in 2016, and since then they've obviously had a few revised versions. So also make sure you buy the most relevant, updated one, because a lot happens in this industry.
It moves pretty quickly. It changes fast. Yeah. Okay, great. All right. Well, my pick, I think I've talked about this one a few times before. This is also one that is getting on a bit now. This was published in 2015, Digital Gold by Nathaniel Popper. So this is basically the story of Bitcoin's early years. From 2008 right up to goes up to sort of late 2014, early 2015. So obviously a lot has happened since then, but it is a really fascinating look at Bitcoin's story, and it's even though it is a few years old now, it is still very relevant. And I think this is a great one for. A lot of people came into crypto in just the last few years. Like a lot of people got into it just in 2021, obviously during the bull market.
Yeah.
And it is so, it's not only fascinating, but I think really useful as well to be reminded of crypto's history. And it's, Bitcoin is still pretty young itself. The crypto space is still very new. But a lot has happened in that time, and this book is great. Nathaniel Popper is a journalist by trade. In fact, I think all the books that I've chosen today are written by journalists. So these are people who have experience of diving deep into these topics, and they've got a real ear and eye for telling a story, which I think is really, really important, because when you're dealing with something technological like Bitcoin, it can be very easy to get kind of bogged down in details. These guys are really good at bringing out the characters involved. And like a lot of the people that this book talks about, people like Gavin Andresen and Mike Hearn, who are sort of fairly early characters in Bitcoin's story who've now kind of faded a bit into the background. It talks about them a lot. I think it's still important to know their stories and their contributions. But it also talks about people like Barry Silbert, Eric Voorhees, who are still very much active in the space. Kind of gone in very different directions, those two. But I find it, I still kind of look through it from time to time, and I find it really interesting to look back and to kind of put current events in context, and to look a bit more back into Bitcoin's history. It's really well written, it really zips along, and it's fascinating. So highly recommended. Digital Gold by Nathaniel Popper. So that's my first pick. What's your second pick, Jessica?
So my second pick is Cloud Money by Brett Scott. And as a disclaimer, I'm still reading this. So I'm about halfway through at the moment, but this is one that I have taken from the Coin Bureau library. And I kind of picked it up one day and had to take it home on the weekend because I really it's very gripping. It's very well written. So as you mentioned, I think everyone on this table is author or journalist by nature, apart from Don Tapscott, who was an entrepreneur originally. But Brett Scott was originally a broker. So he kind of started in the trade side of things and now has moved into... And the book is really interesting because it dives into how since the iPhone came out in 2007, how we've become so much more reliant on technology. And looking at banking as an example, the fintech revolution, I started my career in banking in kind of a Forex bank. So for me, I found it really interesting that he dives into how fintech was supposed to democratize banking, was supposed to level the playing field and make it easier and more accessible for people to navigate their finances. And actually, as of today, it's done the opposite. If you don't have your iPhone with Apple Pay with you at all times. You can be removed from, you can't pay for certain transportation things because they don't accept even card now. It's really, really limiting moving away from a cash-driven society and what repercussions that could have on individuals, and especially individuals that don't want to be aboard this digital bandwagon.
Yeah.
And then how cryptocurrency is kind of in part a solution, but also in part a contributor. So it does just challenge the way that you think about money. And I think this is conclusive for all of the books that I've picked, and it might be the same for you with your books as well. It's always really interesting to look at the characteristics of money and how they work and how we as humans evolve them, and also different regions of the world, what we expect from the characteristics of our money.
Yeah.
And in the Western world, we are very reliant on bank cards, and neo-banking is a very big trend, and how kind of big conglomerates, big organizations will use the data that comes from that to really be able to monitor your movement. So this was a really insightful book. And a few times when I was reading it, I was writing down little quotes and one-liners and thinking, I've got to use that in a script one day, because the banking control element of why cryptocurrency is so important is something that does resonate.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember reading that book last year. It was recommended to me by Dan, head of research. I remember reading it last year and coming to sort of similar conclusions. It was so interesting on the way we use money and the way we think about money. He's actually, spoiler alert, he's actually quite critical of crypto in the end as well. But he does make some valid criticism, but he makes a really sort of impassioned defense for cash as well. And I must say, it did kind of change my attitude towards it as well, because I was very much, I've always been sort of, kind of lean into convenience. So I'm not what I would call an early adopter of most things. Crypto being perhaps, in comparison to most people I know, crypto perhaps being the only exception. But I was always sort of like, bank card, I always appreciated the convenience of bank cards and things like that. And I always just used to get annoyed when people, would insist on taking cash for something.
Yeah.
And it did really make me rethink that and just how important cash is. And there are, quite often people who want to stick using cash are often kind of portrayed as being sort of a bit backwards or a bit, out of touch. And in actual fact, it's, more people than you think feel quite strongly about that. So, yeah.
And it gives you your eureka moments. I know we spoke about this, kind of like, what were the eureka moments for you that really got you into crypto? And one of them for me was in 2017 when I was in India and I was kind of reporting for a Forex bank. And at the time, Modi had put a stop to low denomination banknotes to kind of clean the industry up. And I reference this quite a lot when I'm talking to people about why crypto is so important and why kind of democratization of different currencies is so important, because it put so many small and medium businesses that were customer facing out of business for about 3 to 4 days, which is a really significant time frame if you're living day by day, paycheck to paycheck. And it just underlines the importance of why we do have to put up a bit more of a resilience towards being pro cash and kind of the pro freedom that gives you.
Absolutely. Okay, so Cloud Money by Brett Scott.
Yeah, recommend it, guys. What else have we got?
Okay, yeah, I thoroughly recommend Cloud Money as well. Okay, so next one is Kings of Crypto. Now, but this is another journalist, Jeff John Roberts, and as you might be able to tell from the photo there, it is about mostly about Brian Armstrong and the founding of Coinbase.
Okay.
Now, there is a bit of overlap with digital gold as well, in that it talks about the early days of the crypto industry and gives some really important context. And again, I'm a real sucker for that. I just find that relentlessly fascinating, and it's always good to get another perspective on the early days of the industry. But what this is particularly good on is obviously the founding story of Coinbase. And I must say, people have... A lot of people love Coinbase. A lot of people are ambivalent about it. A lot of people don't love it. Brian Armstrong being, a very sort of a very visible figure in crypto. He gets, a lot of people really admire him. A lot of people aren't fans of him. I must say, I came out of this with a lot more respect for the guy, because it sounded like, although, he's obviously been handsomely rewarded, Coinbase went public, it's a huge company, second biggest exchange, et cetera, the story of how it was founded sounds utterly exhausting. And so this book is really insightful into just how difficult it was to get Coinbase up and running, just how hard these guys had to work.
Wow.
And it also, as it goes along, provides a really interesting insight into just kind of startup culture as well. So if you're interested in crypto, it's worth a read. If you're interested in Coinbase, it's worth a read. And if you're just interested in the mechanics of starting up a new business, working in a startup, getting it off the ground, then this is also really, really interesting. It doesn't kind of pull any punches. Startups are really, really hard. But I must say, I did come out of it with a newfound respect for Brian Armstrong. This one is fairly recent. I think this was published in 2021. Let me just double check that. 2021. So this is still sort of fairly new and obviously still very relevant. Again, very well written, really zips along, and it really brings a lot of the characters in the story to life. So, Kings of Crypto by Jeff John Roberts, another big recommendation.
And you'll never guess who is in the car.
Hello and welcome back to GM Crypto. Now we have so much fun and exciting stuff coming up for you on today's show. But first, we need to talk about the Coin Bureau deals page, Guy.
That's right, Jessica, because it really is the place to find the very best deals in crypto.
For starters, you can find bonuses of up to $40,000 at some of the best crypto exchanges.
And that's not all, Jessica, because you can also get discounts on hardware wallets, sign-up bonuses for some of the top exchanges, and trading fee discounts of up to 60%.
Amazing, Guy. Where can people find this deals page?
Well, just head on over to coinbureau.com/deals or use the link in the description.
Okay, Jessica, what is your next pick?
I have saved the best to last.
Okay.
This is my favorite. This is the first crypto book that I bought at an airport, which I felt like was a sign that adoption is happening. And I think it was around 2018, 2019. This is Cryptocurrency, The Future of Money by Michael J. Casey and also Paul Viger. And so Michael J. Casey is actually a kind of the head of content or chief content officer at CoinDesk now. But these are both journalists. One thing I would say that is great about this book is this is for the non-techies out there. The art of storytelling in this book is really fantastic. It really manages to give some great analogies along the way and some great insights into since maybe 2012, when people first started to utilize Bitcoin as a currency use case, how that's really changed the lives of different demographics of people. And it's stories that I reference quite a lot when I'm trying to shill non-coiners into why cryptocurrency is great. And I feel like it's really made with the intention for the people out there that need to have another person to resonate with rather than technology to resonate with.
Yeah.
And there was one reference in here that I always use, which is the Women's Annex Foundation, which was an initiative that came out in 2013. And one of the founders of this organization and initiative, it's a non-profit organization, he was inspired by the Winklevoss twins.
Right.
So he was inspired by them and he set up this foundation. According to the World Bank, in 2013, 2014, 3% of women in Afghanistan had bank accounts.
Right.
That was it. And then it was really reliant that you would either get paid into your father's bank account or your brother's. And that obviously comes with some challenges based on, your family structure and the kind of positioning that you have. So the Women's Annex Foundation taught women how to code. It set up some schools, taught women how to code, and also encouraged them to become content creators in their own right, writers, and got paid in Bitcoin. And
wow.
Yeah, and it just really highlights, because I think we talk about cryptocurrency every single day, and we talk about why it's amazing. We talk about price a lot. That comes up a lot in our conversations. And it really underlines how anyone can set up a cryptocurrency wallet. It doesn't matter which country you're from. It doesn't matter your gender. It doesn't matter what the government controls and restrictions are like in that country. But it really empowers you and can help change your life. And it was saying how it's changed not only the girls' lives, but also how the families now treat the women in the families, because
Right.
they're not only family members that earn money, but they also invest in these women now too, because these women are earning $250 to $400 a month in Bitcoin, which is remarkable.
I bet that goes a long way in somewhere like Afghanistan.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for anyone, and that is just kind of 2 pages of the book. That's not a big chapter. There is so many references. It's so well researched and so well reported that I would say this tops it for me as kind of the best Bitcoin book that I would gift people that
Okay.
are non-coiners.
Okay, so if you're kind of new to crypto, if
Yeah.
you don't know where to start, that would be what you would recommend.
Absolutely.
Okay, Cryptocurrency, the Future of Money. Yes, I remember reading that a few years ago, and there's another one that they wrote about blockchain as well, called The Truth Machine, which I think you might know as well, which is again like a real. It's a good sort of companion one to the Don Tapscott book.
Nice.
Again, does a good job of explaining the intricacies of blockchain.
Yeah.
And how it works.
Because you realize how many use cases there are that maybe just don't get talked about because they're not so punchy with their headlines, but actually are making a pretty big impact in different regions of the world. And sometimes it's nice to, as you've mentioned, just kind of pick up a book, open a few pages and go, oh yeah, we are doing some pretty amazing things. So for everyone that's watching in the blockchain space, we're doing amazing work, guys.
Keep it up. Keep it up. Okay, so our last pick. Now, this is one that I'm still reading as well. I'm sort of on the last section of it where it gets, I must say, pretty dark. But so this is Tracers in the Dark by Andy Greenberg, The Global Hunt for the Crime Lords of Cryptocurrency. Now, this is absolutely fascinating, kind of scary in a way as well. So one of the sort of common misconceptions that I think a lot of people still have about Bitcoin and crypto in general is that it's completely anonymous. And that, it's a way for people to transact without consequence, without being discovered, or all of that sort of stuff. And so this focuses on people mostly in US law enforcement, working with people like working for entities like the FBI and the IRS. The IRS have this kind of criminal investigation division. So they're like, tax guys, but who actually go and kick down doors and stuff.
Oh, that's quite cool.
Really, really interesting. And so this is them and how and it also talks about Michael Groninger and the founding of Chainalysis as well, blockchain analytics, and how basically a group of people came together, were fascinated by Bitcoin and the blockchain, but we're seeing, obviously, illegal activity happening. The Silk Road is one that springs to mind, and its successor, which was another darknet marketplace called Alphabay. And they set out to try and track these Bitcoin transactions, to try and nail these people who were, either operating these sites or using them to deal drugs or etc. So, and it's the story of how they went after them and how successful they were. And it really is fascinating to see kind of how they did it, how they were able to trace these Bitcoin transactions across the blockchain and then link them to real world identities. And, I've got to say, like, it showcases, I guess, one of the, the sort of darker side of crypto in a way, because it is an uncomfortable truth that crypto has been used for nefarious purposes a lot in the past and kind of still is. Despite what people may think about things like the Silk Road and things like that, that this great sort of libertarian experiment, you can kind of park that to one side and just be like, look, this is something that is used for, for purposes that are not legal. And actually in the last section of the book, where it details crypto's use in child exploitation, you think, well, yeah, you really do need a way to trace people who are using crypto for that. It's fascinating how they do it, and Andy Greenberg, the author as well, talks about it covers the tracking down of Ross Ulbricht, who was the big guy behind the Silk Road. It also tracks down a Canadian guy who was behind Alphabay, and whose OPSEC was a lot better than Ross Ulbricht's was. and how they tracked him down, how they caught him, and his eventual fate. That is all absolutely fascinating as well.
Okay.
And it's interesting to hear about how Chainalysis was set up, how Michael Groninger became kind of, he was, a lot of it stems from the early days of Mt. Gox, which is a fascinating story in itself, and how Michael and Jesse Powell, who is the CEO of Kraken, they were working together at Kraken. They were brought in to help try and clear up the mess that was Mt. Gox. Michael had this idea to start Chainalysis as a result, and it goes from there. So it is a kind of sobering read, because it does delve into that darker side of crypto and Bitcoin in particular. But it's a brilliantly told story. It's very, very revealing of some of these methods that they use. Tells us a lot about crypto and just the world of the internet, and in particular the darknet as well.
Has it changed your perception on privacy coins, this book?
Yeah, it's interesting. He hasn't really discussed privacy coins much at this stage, and it is that you do have this kind of tricky thing to weigh up, because on the one hand you've got this idea of financial privacy, and that should be a right. People should be able to transact privately. That's something that people, one of the founding kind of tenets of cryptocurrency, I think, and it's one that I still stand by as well. The problem is there are these kind of grey areas, there are these overlaps, and it's like, well, should people be allowed to transact privately when it's something that has terrible consequences for children, say? And it's like, well, how can you defend something like that in those circumstances? So yeah, it is. I hope he does kind of get on to talking about privacy coins as well, because there is still a huge debate to be had about that. But yeah, an absolutely fascinating book. This is relative. I think this was published. In fact, it might be published this year. Let me just double check that. 2022, so just last year as well. So it's still very, very current. And that is, Tracers in the Dark by Andy Greenberg. Again, highly recommended. So those are 6 crypto books here recommended by us here at Coin Bureau HQ. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you've read any of these books yourselves and what you think of them. Give us some of your book recommendations in the comments, of course. And if you enjoy this video and it gets lots of views and lots of likes, then we'll do another one, because as Jessica said, there are quite a few crypto books in our library. There are more coming out all the time. So let us know what you would like us to cover next. Jessica, any closing thoughts from you?
I just really enjoyed making this video.
It was fun, wasn't it?
It was really nice to have a little sit down and just get a little bit of an insight into your favourite books as well. So
Likewise. All right, thanks for watching, people. Like and subscribe. See you again soon.